Wait, this is your second
The first
Substack Live?
the first one was with Steve,
Oh,
12 to
shoot,
1.
I wish I should have been. You were a virgin. Darn it. Oh boy. Oh well. Um,
So
it'll say live. There we go. Ryan Lizza.
good to see you, my friends. It's been a while.
So I didn't realize just before we were talking, this is your second Substack Live?
I just was on for an hour with the great Steve Schmidt, and that's an experience. The Steve Schmidt experience is intense.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, of course.
so I feel like this you come at your guests at a slightly different speed. So going from Steve to Don is an interesting transition. Steve's like cocaine. You're like a downer.
A downer? No,
I
I'm
don't mean
more of
that in a
like a,
bad way. I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't know. But yeah, all right, we'll see how this goes. Maybe I'll be describing you as like cocaine at the end as well.
no, I'm more of a Molly. Let's just
There
say
you
something
go.
like
There
that.
you
Yeah,
go.
it's a
There you go.
love experience. It's
Yeah.
very loving. Well, you
Fair
you
enough.
look good. You sound good. It's been a while. So you're on Substack now. You have your own newsletter, correct?
Yeah, it's called Telos, Telos. So telos.substack or just telos.news.
So tell us what's going
Telos.news.
on in your life.
Yeah, that was, that little the ability to call it tell us and then, use the tell us little pun that, that definitely um helped us pick that word. So I was at Politico from 2019 to March 31st, 2025, and I just been watching what's going on Substack for months now, and talking to a lot of friends who are here, um, people that have long journalism careers, and especially people that are used to be in the magazine world, like I've been in. Tina, um, you know, uh, I don't want to mention all the names, but people that I respect and that are doing great work on here, and started talking to some of the folks at Substack as well, and just started. Um, I wrote about this yesterday, Don. I think all of us have. It's different for different people, but there's a moment watching this Trump administration up close as a reporter,
Yeah.
where you kind of just have a moment of like, am I at the place that is telling the public very, very clearly with intellectual honesty what is actually going on for real? And I think the point for me was doing some reporting on Paul Weiss. And I was
Mm.
going back and forth and looking at the websites and how Paul Weiss, the law firm, had changed the language of the biographies of their top partners and the history of the firm, and changed it all in ways to appease the Trump administration. And I remember this moment just sitting there doing this research and reporting and just having this like just the specificity of this poor woman who had to remove from her biography her proudest achievements in life, which were working for the Mueller investigators in the Justice Department, and just memory hold that information. And it made me, it just, it terrified me.
Well,
And
that's what's happening at the networks, and what I call now corporate media is that that's happening in ways that you don't even you kind of get lulled into it. And I'll just
yeah,
say I remember, I won't call any names, but I was at a certain place, and the first LGBTQ White House press secretary was installed, and I said, "Congratulations, such and such is the first." And the bosses called me. It's the first time anyone said, "Take it down," and I'm like, "What?" Take that down because they were just nervous about how the right might seize upon it, or MAGA. And MAGA was not even, and they were trying to, they wanted more conservatives to be able to come in. And I was like, well, that's not really what journalism is about. And there's so much of that that goes on in corporate media, whether it's broadcast or print or whatever, where you kind of get lulled into doing it the way, if you work for company A, you do it the way company A does it. And if you work for company B, you do it the way company B does it. And now you'll get to do it the way company RL does it, which is Ryan Lizza.
Yeah, it's worse than people think. I think it's worse. It's worse than people think because of the context we're in right now,
Hmm.
and the groveling before the Trump administration, or trying to show this idea of fake balance, and constantly trying to prove that you don't have any subjective opinions about the sewer like quality of some of what's being put out there in MAGA world. That is a pointless exercise for journalists to engage in, even on its own terms. You're just going to be completely embarrassed and disrespected
Uh-huh.
by the people in power, because they're going to realize what a pushover you are. But more fundamentally, you're putting your report in a position of lying to your readers and viewers by sort of twisting things into this view that there's just two parties that are political combatants, and everything's equal on both sides, and that rather than identifying the core of the crisis in Washington right now, which is full Republican control, with an administration whose core mission is weaponizing the government against the American people, or at least against the people Trump sees as his enemies. And I think it's really important to just sort of describe things as clearly as you can. Maybe you'll get it wrong sometimes, and just be intellectually honest with your audience, rather than this bullshit way that a lot of scared news organizations have been covering things this year.
Well, I think you're right. And look, folks will, I'm sure people will be like, well, you were in it and you didn't criticize it. And it's like, well, sometimes
And that's fair.
you
There's
get
some of
it.
that that's fair.
Yeah, it's
For me,
go
I'm
on.
not saying anything about you. I'm just saying personally, there's always fair criticism about that, and you do always you lose your identity to a certain extent when you sign up to work with certain media organizations, and so that does go with the territory. You cannot go to pick your brand of mainstream media organization, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, where I worked, and I'm not. I don't want to criticize all of these places with any kind of blanket statements, especially the New York Times, which I'm a huge fan of, and I think is absolutely essential, and I think on a regular basis does the best journalism in the country. So I really do make distinctions among these places, and I think you have to. But when you go to work at one of these places, you are signing up for a lot of rules that are required. And so I would just say that, in terms of, why didn't you, there are limits to the style of writing you can do at a lot of those places, which is one of the things I said yesterday. I couldn't say certain things. I couldn't write in a way that I wanted to at Politico, and that's not totally their fault. I just know that that's not the kind of stuff they publish.
Right, right. Yeah, you just know this doesn't. Oh, this doesn't work. It is not. It's not news of the day. I don't understand why we're doing it. This is not something that we do. Right. There's this sort of unsaid or unwritten
Yeah,
edict that you have that you know about.
yeah, and that's and so you sign up for that going in. What I think what I think a lot of newsrooms need to take a hard look at right now, including Politico, and what I wrote about yesterday, is is the gap between what is actually going on and how you are reporting and framing things. Is it a little too wide? And for
Hmm.
me, it was too wide. And um a lot of the details are there. A lot of a lot of the important information at some of these places we criticize, a lot of the reporting is out at CNN and these other places. But there's some missing pieces, and the missing pieces are really, really important.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
agree.
that
The missing piece is really, really important, and also the way that you frame it and how you come at it. And in the back of your mind, are you saying, "Okay, this is going to get me in trouble with the boss," or they're going to want a little bit more, maybe conservative thinking in there, or right? You know what I mean? Instead of just
Yes.
telling the story, I always say I hate the false equivalency or false equivalence. Pardon me, because I say some things are just objectively bad. And because you find something that's wrong or that's bad about the party that is in power, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to find something bad or wrong about the other folks. Sometimes you're just writing a story on something that is just terrible and outrageous,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's 2025. I can't believe we're still having debates about false equivalency.
yeah, we
I
are
mean,
though, because people are
we've
afraid
been
of it.
talking
Look
about
at
this for decades. Like everyone knows. I'm just gonna change a setting here. Excuse me, Don.
yeah.
Everyone knows. Like that's not a way to do journalism anymore. Like I can't believe we're still having to talk about that.
Yeah, well, because also, I mean, look at the people who were around. Oh wait, hang on. Look at the people who are around the surrounding themselves with, who Donald Trump surrounds himself with, and the people who chose to go to his inauguration, or the people who are who donated to his inaugural funds, or the corporate parent companies of these media institutions or media organizations who have been donating to Donald Trump, sorry, and conservative causes, or liberal causes or whatever it is. That should not trickle down to the newsroom and to the editorial, whether it's left or right. But it is, and it's doing so more now in the Trump administration than it has done at any other time because he has his finger on the scale. And he also knows that if they have these companies, right, because most of these organizations are owned by big either telecommunications companies or big entertainment companies, movie companies. They're not going to be able to get their mergers and acquisitions or whatever business
Yeah.
they have before the government done. He will block it unless they kiss his ass.
That's exactly right. And I wrote about this yesterday, and I will repeat it, despite the fact that Politico sent me a letter from their legal department last night asking me to take my entire article down. But I'm not going to do that. And what an episode that bothered
No.
me.
Wait, they
Yeah,
did?
yeah.
Tell me about that.
I'll tell you the whole story. Well, let me back up. Let me back
Okay.
up.
All right.
Um, yesterday when I launched Telos, if you want to go to the main URL, I hope people
EELOS.news.
Telos dot news. Um, I wrote an article introducing Telos, explaining what it is, and I mentioned Politico a few times. And one context in which I mentioned them was that I was disappointed that after Donald Trump made up a absurd lie about Politico, saying that the government was it was basically sending millions of dollars to Politico. That a Doge had uncovered this, when in fact what actually was happening, um, government agencies were subscribing to Politico's very excellent news service called Politico Pro. It's a subscription service. So the government was spending some money on some political subscriptions, and a bunch of absurd right wingers turned it into a conspiracy theory about Politico being funded by the government. And then Trump decided personally to weigh in on that conspiracy theory. Um, and that sucked. It sucked for for the leadership of Politico to have to deal with that, to be attacked. The question is, how do you respond? And I was very disappointed that the way that they responded to smooth things over was to send our White House correspondent to CPAC and accept an invitation to do an onstage interview at CPAC, which is a sewer of media bashing and
Oh my
right
God.
wing fear mongering, and that this year included some activists who were organizing to have Trump serve a third term. So I don't think there's anything wrong with covering CPAC. Obviously, CPAC is essential. If you want to cover politics, you have to cover it. But I don't think you want to associate yourself with their brand in that way. Anyway, I wrote about that yesterday. Politico didn't like it. They didn't like a couple other lines in my article where I mentioned them. And so last night, Don, I get a couple of phone calls from a phone number I'd never seen before. And then I got two voice messages. So someone was urgently trying to get in touch with me. They left kind of a garbled phone message that got cut off in the beginning, but at the end of the message, it said it mentioned something about a violation, and that I needed to take it down immediately. And I thought, take what down? What violation? And they said they'd be following up in writing. 20 minutes later, I got a letter from the top lawyer at Politico demanding that I delete an 1,800 word article that I wrote at Telos yesterday that was about the way that the media has
I
covered
read it.
Trump.
I thought it was very
That
good.
art, so that article, Politico is demanding that I delete under threat of an implied threat of legal action, because they say that it violated some boilerplate language in my contract about non-disparagement. If you read it carefully, it doesn't disparage Politico, but that's neither here nor there. What bothers me is that a media company that professes to champion the First Amendment above all else would actually send a letter to a journalist asking them not to just, maybe could you change the language on one or two things, we disagree with it, or let us respond, right? That's
Hmm.
normal. That's normal to ask for a correction or ask for a response, but to literally demand that I delete the entire 1,800 word article that is mostly a criticism of Donald Trump.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so a little while ago, I wrote a follow up laying all of this out. And here's the thing you'll really like, Don, because this is where it gets a little awkward. I'm scheduled to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner with Politico on Saturday night as their guest.
Are you going?
So here's my view of this. I think that cooler heads will prevail, that sometimes the business side and lawyers at these big corporations, they get a little too eager and they start sending letters, and they do things that violate the news values of the place. And they do some, things that I know would be appalling to a lot of journalists at Politico, sending such a letter. And I am hopeful that the editorial leadership is going to realize this was a big mistake and apologize, retract that demand, and smooth things over. But I don't know yet. But the answer is I don't know.
I don't think that's going to happen.
You don't think so? Why not?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen because I think that, I mean, I think they would have run it by. Obviously, the editorial saw it. They must have sent it to the lawyers. The lawyers wouldn't be reading that. So someone on the editorial side saw it and sent it and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's doing that." And why would you even want to go there with them, Ryan? I wouldn't.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point. Substack has an event Saturday night that looks
Yeah.
like a lot of fun. So there are other options, but I just think it would be better for all parties if I like Politico. I want them to succeed. I want them to be the best version of themselves, and I don't want
But you
them
don't work
to.
for them anymore.
No, I don't work for them, but like I'm not. They're an important institution in Washington. They have a few hundred journalists, and I want them
If
to do
CNN
better.
called me and asked me to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, while I still want them to succeed and I'm rooting for my former colleagues,
You
I,
wouldn't go.
no, I'd be like, obviously you sent this to me by mistake, and or
Let
I
me be
wouldn't
honest
go.
about the backstory there. I asked, I wanted to support Eugene Daniels, who's an old friend of mine, and he's the president of the White House Correspondents Association. And so, I wanted to be there to support him. And so that's why. And they were,
Oh yeah, you guys are friends. You invited me to something for his wedding or something. I forget. It was something that was happening.
maybe his engagement party that
An
time. Yeah,
engagement party.
his
Yeah,
engagement
yeah.
party. Yeah, I
And then
hosted the engagement
I
party.
corresponded with Eugene, and then I sent him a text recently. I have not heard back from him, which was odd. But
He's been a little AWOL with me too. I think he's like just absolutely, um, just really, really busy with preparing for next weekend. There's a lot of pressure. So,
what do you think of his decision with Amber Ruffin?
I was disappointed
Here
by it.
comes the cocaine or whatever you called it.
I was disappointed by it. I wrote about this yesterday, and I, my view on this is when you sign up a comedian to roast the president at that dinner, you're getting the whole hog. You have to be absolutely balls to the wall in defense of the First Amendment, no
Yeah.
matter what that person says. Okay, you don't have to associate yourself with the comments. You can criticize them and say we wouldn't say that. This was a dumb joke, but you don't fire them. The whole dinner is about the First Amendment. The whole dinner is about defending that value. And I know it sucks to be in the position that Eugene and the board were in, when you've got someone going rogue and saying things like that. But at the end of the day, you don't control that person. You don't control their speech. And you hired them to roast the president at a dinner that celebrates the First Amendment. You can say all that, make it clear, and people will understand.
Mm-hmm.
What do
Mm-hmm.
you have that face like you don't agree with this?
No, I'm listening. I do agree with it. I'm just listening. I think that look, they get to choose whatever the comedian is that they want. I was surprised because the whole point of it is to roast and to have a thick skin. I'm sure you've been roasted at that dinner. I know that I've been roasted at that dinner, and
Now, I've never personally been roasted, fortunately.
oh, I
But
flipped off the comedian in the room. So to me, it kind of is what it is. But I just think it's another example of someone sort of people sort of bending the knee to Donald Trump, and
100%, a hundred
and
percent.
so
That's why I was disappointed. I
that
love
was
Eugene
really
Daniels.
disappointing to me.
Eugene is one of my best friends. I love him, and I'm sure it was a very, very difficult decision. But yeah, I agree. It was the wrong way to go on this.
Yeah, and I have not been critical of him at all. I haven't really spoken about that, but I did a show with Larry Whitmore. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, and so no, what's his name? Anyways, see, that's the senior. I'm not as sharp as I used to be. And we talked about that, and he said they could have gotten a conservative comedian,
Yeah.
right?
To
And they
replace her. Yeah.
No, they could have gotten
Or
one in the beginning if that's what they wanted. They could have just said, "Well, why don't we get a conservative comedian or whatever, and
yeah.
it'll be fine." But and then Trump would be like okay with it. I think Larry Wilmore. That's it. They would have
Larry
been
Wilmore. Yeah.
fine
Yeah.
with it. Thank you. My
Yeah.
producer is like weighing in on text on the.
Yeah.
He's not even there, so that's how you know you have a good producer. And so yeah, I that part I'm not happy with how they did it. I'm not happy with
Yeah.
people who are just sort of acquiescing even in advance, even now. I think that we're supposed to hold truth to power, right?
Yeah.
Without fear or favor. And now we're doing it, and people are favoring the Trump administration, and they are in fear of the Trump administration, and that shouldn't be how we operate.
I agree 100%. And look, the Trump administration doesn't play, they're not intellectually honest. They don't play by the same rules. One of my favorite podcasters, Sam Harris, his line about this is, there's no net. They're playing tennis without a net, right? And then as soon as the other side, or what they see as an enemy, does anything, they hold us to the highest standards possible. So it would have been absolutely trivial for a conservative comedian to make a similar joke about Joe Biden, and you obviously would not have heard a peep of criticism by anyone on the right, and you would have heard howls of protest if that comedian were somehow fired from an event, because they're not playing with a net. They don't care about those rules. But they will not think twice about holding other people up to the standards that they don't have to live by. And that's exactly what went on with this comedian. You had a bunch of White House flunkies going out there and bashing the media because of this comedian's joke, and demanding that everyone boycott the event. And that put pressure, I am quite sure, on all the parent companies of the membership of the White House Correspondents Association, and everyone freaked out. And she had to be the sacrificial lamb to this bad faith argument that came from the White House.
See, I would have just
That
said, you know what, I'm standing by. I think people would have more respect for it if you just said, "I'm standing by what what this is about, supposed to be about." But look, I don't know what
yeah,
he's dealing with behind the scenes. I don't know if he's trying to protect a position at a network. I don't know. I have no idea what it is.
and it's not just him;
But
it's the
it's
whole board. The whole board voted unanimously for that, so
the
it's not just
whole
Eugene.
board voted unanimously. Who
Yeah.
all's on the board?
It's funny. I couldn't tell you right now, like all the names, but it's probably, I don't know. I don't want to get it wrong, but it's probably 8 to 12 people. But the release they put out said it was a unanimous decision. Yeah. So
Wow, wow, wow. Are they all
yeah.
afraid, or do they really think by her being a comedian saying, I think what does she say, like um the other something about the left, like
Okay,
because they're literally killing people or something, she said, right? Was that
well,
what she said?
it goes back to our previous conversation here, because it was her and Samantha Bee talking about false equivalence, and
Yeah.
talking about both sidesism. And she made a joke about, like, I'm not I don't want to get it wrong, but she said something like, I'm not accusing anyone of killing people, but then I think the gist of it was she was joking that yes, the Trump administration is killing people, so they fired her.
I mean, their policies, by getting rid of USAID, you could say that possibly.
That's what
Uh,
that was her point, Don. I think that was her point, is like, if you if you take the logical conclusion of this decision and this decision and this decision, is that people will die. I don't think it's very controversial to say that killing the PEPFAR program, that provides medications for HIV patients in places like Africa and other places. I don't think it's too much to say that people are going to die because that program no longer exists, right? So I think that was her point. Now I'm gonna get not gonna be allowed to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner.
I don't think they're going to invite you. No, I don't think that Politico is going to invite you. I think they're going to just say either your name when you show up, it won't be there. You better check before, or they're going to rescind their offer. And I don't think you should. Why do you want to go? I don't understand it. Like I don't. Well, that's you. But I.
Well, I told you
To,
I wanted to, it's Eugene's big night. He's a good friend, and I've always, I've been talking about, this event with him for quite a long time, and so that's probably the main reason. But I don't know. You're making a good case that I should bail.
yeah, but also, I mean, look, if they invite you, go. I don't think they're going to. That's just me. Let me know. Text me. Call me. And let me know. But I'm surprised at the whole look. This is going to sound bizarre. I'm surprised that the White House correspondents um, still take themselves that seriously. They have important jobs to do. Not the
Fair.
correspondents, but I mean the board. They still have important jobs to do. But we see from what happens in the briefing room to the no news comes from there. Very rarely
Yeah.
does news come from, if at all, from the briefing room. It
Yeah.
comes from very diligent White House reporters or just investigative reporters doing the work behind the scenes. What
That's
happens in
true.
that briefing room is a show that the Trump administration puts on every day. And Caroline Levitt tries to be, I guess, as rude and as dismissive of the people in that room as possible. And then every once in a while, you get into a fight, and then that becomes another distraction that the
Yep.
news ends up covering rather than what is really going on. So I don't, and then they
100% right.
don't defend each other. They don't like, they don't have each other's backs when she's rude to someone or she cuts someone off. The next person doesn't ask the same question, or they don't all
There's
walk
no
out when the
solidarity.
AP, yeah, like
Yeah.
when the AP, when they kick the AP out, everyone should just leave the room,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And
It's broken. You're absolutely right. It's broken, and Trump, has helped move it along. Um, I'm of two minds about this because, on the one hand, I believe that these institutions matter, Don, and I believe
it
they're
does.
good. And it's almost like I don't want to. You're probably right that it's past its expiration date, and
Mhm.
it's irretrievably broken. But I sort of, I don't want to believe that, because it would be another thing that Trump broke. And um I do think that, we want to get back to a place where the relationship between the White House Correspondents Association and an incoming or and a new administration is is normalized. It's never like perfect. I mean, like, there are little things that, like, the Obama administration did, the Bush administration. Um, I remember I got kicked off a plane once. I got kicked off a campaign plane by the Obama people because they didn't like a piece. So there's always been like little, little stuff like that. But that institution, um, I, I hope it survives, Don, because it would just be another sign of, like, the erosion of the important institutions in Washington that were kind of like the um they're like the tendons that keep keep the democracy together, and it's just like he's ripping out, or the wiring. He's just ripping out all the wiring, and it's like another circuit, another piece of wiring that helped keep things, that kept our democratic institutions kind of connected. That he's just trashing.
Well, yes, but I think that in order to do it, you have to stand up in order to have those institutions and those norms. In order to keep them, you have to do something, I believe, dramatic and drastic in the moment. Doesn't mean that it'll go away, but that White House press briefing is a way for them to spin the news in their favor. And if that didn't exist, they couldn't spin. And what would be happening is that the real reporting going on behind the scenes would be the thing that would be taking precedent and priority. Let me just read something to you
Yeah,
because it goes
yeah.
into the conversation that we're having. And I'm not sure if you knew about this. Top producer of 60 Minutes quits, saying he lost independence. The news program has faced mounting pressure from both President Trump and his corporate ownership at Paramount, the parent company of CBS News. CBS News entered a new period of turmoil on Tuesday after the executive producer of 60 Minutes, Bill Owen, said that he would resign from the long-running Sunday news program because he had lost his journalistic independence. In an extraordinary declaration, Mr. Owens, only the third person to run the program in its 57-year history, told his staff in a memo that over the past months, it has become clear that I would not be allowed to run the show as I have always run it, to make independent decisions based on what was right for 60 Minutes, right for the audience.
Wow, I didn't know. So I hadn't heard that. Is that kind of hot off the presses, or something I
That's
just
hot off the
haven't
presses.
seen?
This is according to the New York Times is reporting this, and there's a memo, and they're quoting from it. So he said, having defended this show and what we stand for from every angle over time with everything I could, I am stepping aside so the show can move forward. He wrote in the memo, which was obtained by the New York Times.
Look, I mean, I
That
should.
tells you everything. That tells
That
you
tells you everything.
everything, Ryan.
And you know this from being in the broadcast world. um 60 Minutes holds itself up as the people who work there, like, their independence from corporate interference is sacrosanct, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that show has a reputation above almost all others when it
It
when it
does.
comes to that.
It does.
And so someone who's been there as long as he has, um, would be particularly sensitive to the clamping down by the parent company. I assume, Don, that some of this has to do with the potential legal settlement that everyone has been holding their breath, waiting to see if CBS enters into over the fake lawsuit that Trump filed?
Well, this is why I think that he was being pressured to change things, and they're being pressured to settle, I'm sure, so that this Paramount merger with what is it, Ellison, or is it Redbird, or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah. I don't know yeah, I'm not, don't rely on me for the details of that, but it's something that that has some federal government sign off required, and is making CBS News's corporate overlords very nervous and very eager to be chummier with the Trump administration. And they saw CBS embarrassingly cave when Trump filed a ridiculous, frivolous lawsuit against George Stephanopoulos, and
that was
ABC
ABC, yeah.
coughed up $15 million, which it was, I'm sure, so CBS looked at that and saw, and said, maybe that's a path out of this. And um, there was a huge blowback after the ABC thing that I think has held off CBS from making the same mistake. Um, but so this seems like the next shoe that has dropped.
It's really, I think corporate media, I mean, look, everyone has been predicting the demise of, you know, broadcast and cable media. I don't think it's over, but I think this puts another nail in the coffin. Not the final, but another. That's how I feel. And right, someone, Jane Burns, is in the comments. And by the way, whoever it was in the comments, that someone in the comments tipped me off, saying that CBS top producer there. But Jane Burns, thank you. Take a lesson from Harvard. I think everyone should do that. Kiara Stroop is saying, do not obey in advance. Yep, another nail, agreed, says agent number 99. Caroline Schneider, agreed. And for those of you, that's what I was saying to you. That's why it was so important, I think, for the White House Correspondents Association to stand up to Donald Trump and say, this is our decision. Like the AP said, it is our decision to
Exactly.
say the Gulf of
Exactly.
Mexico and not the Gulf of America. And so I feel the White House correspondents should do that. I thought, I don't know what's going on with CBS, man, but wow. I mean, one day they're going to space, and then the next day their top program producer is resigning. Woo!
No, it's really bad. And it's why, I had to make a decision last night, Don. I got this letter, and like, it's a little scary when you get a legal demand. And I just decided there's no way in the world I'm going to delete an entire article from the internet, and that it is embarrassing for a news organization to ask a journalist to do that. Um, and so this is like, all of us, I'm not trying to, to be some martyr here, but all of us, and especially those of us who were in corporate media very recently, we're under an enormous amount of pressure. And look what happened. Columbia caved, but then Harvard stood up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paul Weiss and the other law firms caved, and then Jenner, was it Jenner Brock or whatever it is, and a few others, they held firm, they sued, and it serves as a model for other people, other institutions, that you don't pre-obey, and that you can push back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're kind of at a turning point this spring with all of this, you know, where civil society there's a little bit more of a sense of solidarity. People are seeing what these other law firms and what institutions like Harvard and what journalists who aren't bending the knee. And I think people start mirroring that behavior because they realize, oh no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do it. You give Donald Trump $15 million like ABC did. You don't have to go to the inauguration and suck up to him like Bezos and Tim Cook, and the other tech oligarchs
Well, those are the
did.
people who are doing it publicly. There are many others who are doing it privately or behind the scenes. Trust me. I've been up
Yeah,
close. I've witnessed it up close and personal interactions where I'm like, wow, look at this shit. Yeah.
100%.
Ryan,
I've seen the same.
you're the best, man. Tell folks where we can find you and what are you going to do here on Substack?
Telos.news. Look, the mission statement is that what we are witnessing in Washington is a crisis. Um,
Hmm.
the core fact you need to understand about the Trump administration is that it is weaponizing the state against the American people. That's what it's doing. And that is the story in Washington. And everything else takes a backseat to that. I've been covering politics for almost 30 years. I'm sure at some point I'll get back to writing about campaigns and polling and primaries and all that important stuff. But right now, what the Trump administration is doing by seizing the levers of the government and weaponizing it against universities, law firms, journalists, immigrants, the whole list. That is the story, and we're going to be the place for investigative reporting, news, analysis, and commentary about that. We have a big investigative piece coming up next Tuesday, a 9,000 word piece I've been working on for a while. So please check us out and subscribe.
Wow, look at that. Great combo, Christy Sharp says. Carol Schneider says, this show was very informative. Thank you. So, Ryan, let's get together and do something weekly or on a consistent basis
I would
to
love that.
inform people. And I
I'm gonna
would
get a
love
cool
to.
background. I gotta get a cool background like you. I'll get my this set up a little nicer. And
This is all new.
yeah,
I just did this before. It was in my dining room. You're fine. Then nobody cares about that anymore. Don't you listen?
that's
Don't
true.
think that
That
you
is
have
true.
that. Nobody cares, and your background is great. The only thing that I would tell you is, well, you want me to tell you how to fix it?
Absolutely.
Just put
I want you to come.
just put a little sunshade over your windows to take away the brightness. Still be able to see the view, but it'll
Yes.
just help you
Yeah. I
to
don't think anyone cares about that view anyway. But yeah, I hear you.
even out the lighting a little bit. Yeah, if you have like a Roman shade that's just the one that you just put down to
Yeah,
stop the glare.
this is a classy place, Don. I have a shade on that window.
It is. It's a great
Yeah,
place. I don't think you
I
need
can pull the
anything
shade
else.
down. So, all right, next time I'll put the shade down. Let's do this anytime you want. I really appreciate it. Your viewers should know that we've been doing TV together for a long, long time and are old pals. So I love seeing you, and I'll come back anytime.
I'm always rooting for you. I'm always in your corner, and you know that. So
Same.
welcome to Substack, and congratulations on Telos. And we look forward to seeing more of Ryan Lizza and spending more time with him. Thank you, my friend. I'll
You
see you
got it,
soon.
man.
Okay,
I'll see you
bye
soon.
everyone. I'm going to see you coming up. Olivia Troy. I have a live with Olivia Troy,
Oh, nice. She's the best.
and she knows what's going on in Washington. I was just on the at the town hall with her and Jim and Michael Cohen.
I saw that. That looked great. You guys
It
were
was
like
so good.
terrific.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll see you
Take
later.
care.
Talk to you later.
Take
Bye
care,
bye.
man.
Bye bye everyone.